Hello, this is Phil Tomzak, and for the next hour I will be reading from the March 20th issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. And let's start with some front page news from the GTA. The headline, "A Night at Mississauga's Ridgeway Plaza. As Ramadan ends, hundreds break their fast at the vital late-night hub." And this comes from Karen Liu, food reporter for the Star. There's a controlled chaos when dining at Ridgeway Plaza during the last days of Ramadan. The sprawling Mississauga complex with more than 100 restaurants and cafes, most with halal-friendly menus, has become a food destination for diners from across the GTA and beyond since it opened in 2022. Throughout the last month, many spots stay open until the early morning to accommodate those breaking their fast at sundown and praying at nearby mosques. There are special menus and deals to mark the occasion. A $15 iftar combo complete with samosas, naan, kebabs, and a refreshing rose syrup drink, or a cafe offering date lattes as a sweet midnight treat. It's a beautiful but imperfect plaza, plopped in a largely car-dependent residential area without the surrounding infrastructure to handle the traffic and noise, with complaints that in the past included street racing and fireworks. But, despite the headlines, people who frequent Ridgeway say it's become a vital gathering space, especially for the Muslim community during the holy month. "It's embarrassing how often I go. I'm there twice a week now for Ramadan," said Zoha Hassan, an urban planning graduate who studied how Ridgeway Plaza became a gathering space for South Asian and Middle Eastern immigrant communities. Hassan has seen grandmas using the plaza for daily walks, wedding parties, grabbing food, and has attended poetry readings at Matari Coffee Company, a Yemeni coffee house. People joke about going there to find their soulmate. You'll see young people, but also uncles having chai talking about politics, moms and teens splitting up because they all want to eat different things. I have relatives who come from the U.S. just for that plaza. Hassan describes her favorite dish at Ridgeway, the nihari from Cafe Piala, House of Nihari, but advises going at 5 p.m. if I want to score a table at the small restaurant without reservations, especially in the days leading up to Eid when more people dine out. Owner Bob Sheikh said overall business has gone up 1.5 times during Ramadan. The dish is a boneless beef shank that has been stewed for 8 hours in a sweet and spicy gravy, served on a small stove at the table to keep it hot. A torn piece of blistered, flaky naan stops up as much of the velvety sauce as possible, but what makes it are the sides. Slivers of raw ginger, green chilies, and a squeeze of lime on top for a tart. Fresh pop. It's a beloved Pakistani dish that's less widely known throughout Toronto, but at Ridgeway, there's enough demand that a restaurant can have it as its main attraction. By 6 p.m., people start coming for takeout and pre-ordered party platters. Less than an hour later, reservations go from 30% to fully booked until 9:30 p.m. Its sister restaurant next door, Bob's Shinwari, The Tribe, is also full, including a reserved table for 14. A family of 8 is turned away for not having a reservation, resulting in a woman calling a relative elsewhere in the plaza to find a last-minute table. Pardon me. They're trying their luck at the nearby Somali spot, Hamdi. Sisters Samaya and Zainab Faruqi reserved a table at Cafe Piala the day before. "We love Pakistani food, so we come here for the nihari and chili kebabs. It's the taste, but the customer service is always on it," said Samaya before she excused herself with a minute left before sundown. At precisely 7:30 p.m., the room gets quiet as diners break their fast with dates provided at each table. At 8 p.m., if people weren't circling the parking lot in hopes of finding a spot, they were in a restaurant. There's a line at Sun Chinese Cuisine, a Lanzhou hand-pulled noodle place with 9 noodle shape options. The adjacent Yummy Istanbul, Donair, and Pide shop is also seeing brisk business. If I wanted to beat the dessert crowd, I had to go to Matari Coffee Company now for their Ramadan-only offering, a latte sweetened with date syrup. It's a constant crowd, but with predictable hours, said Khattab Hamid, who runs this location of the Yemeni coffee chain based in Michigan. He's opening his own roastery and cafe at Sankofa Square this spring. Between 7:30 p.m. and 9 p.m., people get their coffees to go before heading to the mosque. By 9 p.m., the tables fill up for dine-in. After 10 p.m., people are back from the mosque, and the flow keeps going until the last espresso shot is pulled at 4 a.m. The cafe is full of chatter as people sip big cups of spiced coffees and teas and treat themselves to warm Yemeni honeycomb bread drizzled with honey. It's one of the few places in the GTA that's open late, and it's family-friendly and halal. Most of the units are small mom-and-pop shops, so it's easy to support small businesses, said Kareen Kalwi, who managed to grab a table at the cafe with his wife, Manar Eldin. Despite the freezing temperatures and snow, there's a vibrant buzz in the air at 10:30 p.m. There's the occasional car honk, but it's far from the level of noise that has made the plaza a target of complaints since it opened. Last summer, Mississauga city officials ordered an injunction to prevent large gatherings at the plaza, including during Afghanistan and Pakistan Independence Days. For Asan, the urban planning grad, the solution isn't to ban people from gathering, but to acknowledge that Ridgeway has become a community space and to find infrastructure solutions that meet the needs of businesses and residents. Hamid, the cafe owner who also lives across from the plaza, said the plaza's management has been effective in controlling things like illegal car racing, and because of the plaza's popularity, property values have gone up. Businesses at Ridgeway are starting to expand outside of Toronto, and some have become franchises, he adds. In fact, Cafe Piala is opening a Pickering location next month to appease diners to the east. Canada should make this kind of plaza in every neighborhood, so this one plaza won't be this busy, said owner Bob Shake. It's successful because everything is under one roof. Let's move on to our next story from the GTA, with the headline, Parents Outraged by TDSB Slashing the Number of Summer School Locations by More Than Half. I'm Still Reeling. And this comes from Isabel Tiantonio, an education reporter for The Star. Toronto's public board is scaling back its elementary summer school programming by slashing the number of locations by more than half, a move that has outraged parents and left them scrambling for alternatives. The Toronto District School Board, the TTSB, will run its literacy and numeracy program throughout July for kids in kindergarten to grade 8 at 11 sites, along with a virtual program for students in grades 6 to 8, down from 24 in-person locations last summer. While the board has long offered free summer school, the number of sites has declined in recent years. The TDSB website now says the program focuses on students who have been recommended by their principal for remedial support, which is a shift from previous years when it was open to all elementary students. Typically, summer school runs in the morning, focused on building reading, writing, and math skills. In the afternoon, some sites host Jay's Camp RBI Summer Edition, a free baseball and arts program that operates independently from the TDSB but uses its facilities. This summer, 8 locations will offer it. A lack of transparency. Trustee Alexis Dawson, whose powers were stripped last June when the province took over the board, said parents are outraged by the reduction. While she's unclear why the decision was made, she said cutting of programs always relates back to provincial underfunding. There's a complete lack of transparency around budget and decision making under current supervision, she told the Star. Dawson said the change this summer is especially concerning for parents in underserved communities, where families rely on local schools for both academic support and summer childcare. For some, enrolling in a school outside their neighborhood will mean long treks by car or transit. For others, simply getting there won't be possible, so kids will miss out on summer school, which has parents worried about widening learning gaps or excessive screen use over the holidays. She also said that relying on principals to recommend students puts an incredible administrative burden on them, and she questions how students in French immersion, where instruction until grade 4 is entirely in French, would be identified as benefiting from an English language summer school. The Star asked the TDSB why there are fewer summer school sites, if the decision is tied to funding, and how it will affect overall enrollment. In a statement, a board spokesperson said the focus of summer school will continue to be on gap-closing instruction to further develop reading, writing, and mathematical skills for students who are not yet meeting curriculum standards. Over the past few years, TDSB has focused its resources to support strong programming to build core learning skills for student success, wrote Emma Moynihan via email. Subject to enrollment, TDSB will be able to offer a similar number of spaces overall, either through virtual or in person, while continuing to focus on improved learning outcomes. Registration information will be shared with families after the March break. The TDSB website said spaces are limited and available on a first-come, first-served basis. Program viability is based on enrollment. Priority will be given to students who are recommended by a principal, but anyone can apply. Parents are left reeling. At Rawlinson Community School, it used to run summer school and Jay's camp, but was cut from this year's list. Parents are upset. I'm still reeling, said Francesca Burdett-Kautz, who planned on enrolling her boys, aged 10 and 6, after a fantastic experience there last year. It gave kids an opportunity to continue learning and to get engaged with active and healthy lifestyles through the sports summer camp, she said, adding the school is a short walk from home, which made it convenient. With Rawlinson no longer offering summer school, Burdett-Kautz is weighing her options, which could include significant costs if she has to pay for camp. Now, the nearest summer school is about 3 kilometers away, which would make dropping off her kids and getting to work more challenging. Beyond the commute, she worries the drastic cut in locations will mean fewer spots, leaving her to wonder if city-run and private camps are prepared to absorb the influx of kids. The Star asked the City of Toronto if it will expand its summer camps. A spokesperson says Camp TO will be at over 170 locations with 115,000 spaces, and we will continue to monitor demand and adjust capacities as resources allow. The registration for Camp TO begins on March 24th. Sharuka Thengalingam has spent the last year writing to TDSB staff trying to get summer programming returned to Silverthorne Community School. It was last offered there in 2024. Losing the Silverthorne summer school site removes one of the very few free spaces families can count on, she said, adding, an equity-driven system should protect, not cut, programs. Summer school and the Jay's Care program keeps kids safe, structured environments where they build confidence, leadership, and the developmental stability every child needs to grow. This summer, she'll try to get her son into city-run camps, noting they are really hard to get into because of limited spots, and will rely on grandparents for childcare. For Diane Joseph, whose daughter struggles with reading and writing, summer school is critical. While her kids' school doesn't offer summer programming, Joseph hopes she'll get a spot elsewhere. If not, she'll hire a private tutor. I've got no choice, said Joseph, adding literacy and mathematical skills are essential. The TDSB has long run elementary summer school. During the pandemic, it moved online, but in 2022, in-person learning returned at about 35 sites, with a virtual option for grades 6 to 8. The number of locations was similar in 2023, then declined to about 30 in 2024 and 24 in 2025. This summer, it will run at 11 sites: Carlton Village Junior and Senior PS, Dixon Grove Junior Middle School, Dr. Rita Cox Keena Minnegock Public School, Driftwood PS, Eastwood PS, Gateway PS, John D. Parker JS, Oak Ridge Junior PS, Rose Avenue Junior PS, Willow Park PS, and Yorkwoods PS. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Let's move on to more news from the GTA. The headline, Metrolinx and Ontario government extend Alstom's GO train contract for $1.3 billion. And this comes from Andy Takagi, transportation reporter for the Star. French rail company Alstom has been awarded a 5-year, $1.3 billion contract extension to operate and maintain the GO and UP express trains, or Go and Up express trains, after plans to give a 23-year deal to a consortium fell apart last year. Deutsche Bahn, Germany's national rail company, and Canadian construction company Aecon Group were originally supposed to take over the operations and maintenance of Metrolinx's main rail lines on January 1, 2025, as part of the multi-billion-dollar GO expansion project, but the handover never took place. Instead, the province and Metrolinx confirmed it had ended its contract with the two companies after receiving questions from the Star, less than 2 years after they were contracted to operate and maintain the GO train network. Metrolinx at the time did not answer questions about how much the contract with Deutsche Bahn and Aecon was worth or how much had already been paid out. Alstom, the French rail company, has been contracted to operate GO trains since 2021 after it took over Bombardier's rail division. Last week, the Star reported that 2 Alstom operators were dismissed after an Oakville-bound GO train carrying 120 passengers nearly derailed. The expansion plan would effectively transform GO from a commuter railway into an all-day, two-way transit network, with service every 15 minutes or better on core parts of the network. It would enable projected annual GO ridership to reach more than 200 million by 2055 and is seen as crucial to meeting future transportation needs of the rapidly growing region. GO expansion, previously known as Regional Express Rail, is the province's single largest transit project and was launched under the Ontario Liberals and expanded under the Ford government. In 2020, companies had warned Metrolink and Infrastructure Ontario about the public-private procurement model used for the GO expansion projects, with concerns about how much financial risk they were being asked to take on. The documents warned that changing course would delay procurement for the expansion. Documents obtained by the Star showed. Our next story is a Star exclusive, with the headline, Doug Ford wants to outlaw resale tickets that cost more than the original price. And this comes from Rob Ferguson, the Star's Queen's Park Bureau. Premier Doug Ford is taking aim at ticket scalpers 7 years after removing a cap on resale prices that his government deemed unenforceable. Just in time for Toronto's FIFA World Cup games this spring, but too late for last fall's Blue Jays World Series, when Ford lamented ticket gouging, the province is planning to outlaw ticket resales that cost more than the original price, the Star has learned. The move is a threat to tickets resale sites, which would lose their ability to mark up tickets for a profit and have warned previously that price caps risk driving secondary sales into the black market.
With these new measures, consumers would no longer need to worry about being ripped off in the ticket resale market, Stephen Crawford, the cabinet minister responsible for the file, said in a statement obtained Thursday by the Star. Ontario is following the lead of the UK government, which proposed in November to make it illegal to resell tickets for sports games, concerts, comedy shows, and other live events above the original cost. The country's business minister, Peter Kyle, pledged the measure would smash the business model of touts, British slang for scalpers and resellers. In Ontario, there will be new powers to stop what the government calls unfair service charges and fees, and to protect against the sale of fake tickets through improved validity guarantee requirements. The changes will be made through amendments to the previous Liberal government's Ticket Sales Act, which was passed in 2017, that also banned the online bots used to automatically snap up tickets. 2 years later, Ford's government scrapped provisions of that law capping ticket resale prices at 50% above the original price. At the time, Government and Consumer Services Minister Bill Walker said the limit was unenforceable because there was no requirement to disclose the original price. Under amendments to the proposed, when MPPs begin the spring session of the legislature on Monday, ticket resellers would be legally required to inform the buyer of the original price, associated fees, service charges, and taxes, a government source said on Thursday, speaking privately to discuss internal deliberations. Buyers will be advised to report any suspected violations to Consumer Protection Ontario, part of Crawford's Ministry of Public and Business Service Delivery and Procurement, which can levy penalties. Consultations will be held to decide penalties, which are now set at a maximum of $10,000, but could go as high as $25,000, the source added. Ford's change of heart came after the Blue Jays and Los Angeles Dodgers played a tight 7-game World Series in October, and fans faced skyrocketing prices. Prime seats in the lower bowl at the Rogers Center were going for as much as $10,000 from resellers. They're gouging the people, Ford said. There were also concerns 2 years ago over high prices for Taylor Swift concert tickets. And our next story from the front page, under real estate news. You want to live in a garage? How 4 new apartments were squeezed into a building in East York. And this comes from Victoria Gibson, the Star's affordable housing reporter. From the entrance of Unit G1, a ground floor apartment in a 1950s rental building in Danforth, East York, it's clear this home wasn't in the original plan. Its most eye-catching feature, a fire engine red front entrance, opens up to a yet untouched one-bedroom apartment bathed in a fresh coat of white paint. In the middle of the living space, there's a small glint of metal on the floor from a drainage clean-out access cover. But there are few hints, otherwise, that this space wasn't always an apartment. Until recently, it was a garage. What was once a row of 9 garages at the base of a 26-unit, 4-story rental building, garages the owner says were mostly used as storage in recent years, has been gutted and rearranged as apartments, with a 1-bedroom and 3 studios. It's one of the latest cases in Toronto of adaptive reuse, or using different types of buildings to add housing, like the recent efforts to convert underused office spaces into living setups. Braden Irwin, whose company bought the rental building at 325 Salmon Avenue in 2019, says this is how he always imagined using the ground floor space. He pointed to the new picture windows and polished concrete floors in the 1-bedroom that he says aimed for a loft feel. The splashy red doors, he said, were the idea of architects from Stephen Fong Architecture. There is, I think, a missing segment in the rental market, Irwin told the Star, saying they aim to create stylish units without sky-high prices. I'm not talking about the least expensive units on the market, but what we're trying to do is offer a really high-quality product in that middle market range. At $2,300 per month for the 1-bedroom and $1,900 for a studio, The new units are a few $100s below the average price of a new build rental in Toronto, which as of late 2025 was about $2,500 for a one-bedroom and $2,200 for a studio, and that's per the market research firm Urban Nation. To proceed with its garage conversion plan, the company of which Irwin is president, 2712866 Ontario Limited, needed permission from Toronto's Committee of Adjustment. At a hearing in late 2022, a neighbor raised concerns about noise and a lack of discussion with neighbors. The committee, too, was hesitant to say yes and asked for more clarity on what would happen to the asphalt outside of the new front doors. Could vehicles still park there, or would it be new green space? At a second hearing in 2023, Irwin's team presented a new site plan that showed a walkway replacing the asphalt where cars used to park, with gardens, greenery outside the doors, and trees along the property line. It was enough to win over their neighbor, who said they fully supported a plan to add more rentals and much-needed green space. There was no on-site parking planned for the building, which is located about 10 minutes walk away from the Greenwood TTC station. Work began in earnest in 2024. Changing use wasn't a simple process, Irwin said. In their case, it included breaking up the concrete below the old garages, replumbing, then repouring the concrete, plus months of back and forth over whether the building's electrical system needed upgrading, which he said could have cost more than $100,000. That ultimately was not needed, he said. Something like that would have been really the difference of us being able to do this project and not, Irwin said. He felt the process of getting clarity on the path forward was more drawn out than needed. It shouldn't be this difficult, especially when there's such a need for this type of housing, he said. This kind of adaptive project in an existing space can be cheaper than building new, Irwin said. He said their team, which finished the new units in January, wound up spending between $300,000 and $350,000 per apartment. On a chilly day in mid-March, the space in front of the new apartments was covered by a thin layer of snow. A row of young cedar trees had been planted near the property line, and the asphalt had been replaced with a walkway, soil and pea gravel, with Irwin noting that some spaces had been earmarked for garden beds. The design of the outdoor space isn't finished, he said, noting they were consulting with a landscape architect on what to add. There are a lot of things I would love to do, but we're restrained by how much things cost. At the end of the day, it's an investment. There has to be a return on that investment, he said, noting additional landscaping would likely take place in the spring or summer. And you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. On to our next story, and this is news from Canada, with the headline, Canada and the Allies say they're ready to help stop Iran's shipping blockade. And this comes from Dylan Robertson, the Canadian Press. Ottawa. Prime Minister Mark Carney has endorsed a statement issued by allies expressing a willingness to contribute to efforts to reopen the Strait of Hormuz more than 2 weeks into the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. Carney endorsed the joint statement Thursday, shortly after it was published by the UK, France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Japan. We express our readiness to contribute to appropriate efforts to ensure safe passage through the strait. We welcome the commitment of nations who are engaging in preparatory planning, reads the joint statement. The statement does not say how the nations propose to help. Defense Minister David McGuinty has said Canada is considering aiding Iran's neighbors to defend themselves if they seek assistance from the NATO alliance. The statements come as Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand told the Canadian Press she will be pitching her G7 peers in Paris on possible diplomatic off-ramps to end the war next week. In response to the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes launched on its territory last month, Iran limited traffic through the strait, through which 1/5 of the world's oil and gas transits, and bombed major fuel shipping sites, causing global oil prices to spike. At a news conference shortly before the statement was released, McGuinty said again that Canada was not consulted on the war before it began and doesn't intend to join it. He did not rule out Canadian military involvement. If neighboring states around Iran, in the Middle East and in the Gulf, require the assistance of NATO allies, this is something that NATO allies are considering and Canada is also considering, he said. It's also a very dangerous situation. It's changing hour by hour, and it is sometimes difficult to get clear and hard intelligence, so we're watching it very closely. Conservative MP Shiv Majumdar called out the government for joining the Thursday statement after allies had released it. He cast himself as a ringleader for middle powers. Instead, objectively, he's flip-flopping his way through a major crisis, Majumdar wrote on social media. Our allies acted, then Carney's Liberals begged to be read in after the fact. It's like he has no idea what he's doing. In London, Anand told the Guardian newspaper on Wednesday that she will present a document of principles to G7 officials in Paris to encourage a collective and coordinated discussion about off-ramps. Anand refused to repeat the term document of principles in a Thursday interview with the Canadian press. I would not use that terminology at this time in order to preserve the trust of our partners, she said. For this kind of diplomacy to be effective, it is best to ensure that the conversations remain contained, and that is important in order to reach positive results. Anand said she has been reaching out to allies and countries in the Persian Gulf, where Canada has been signing various investment and partnership agreements. Canada has 4 priorities on the war in Iran, Anand said Thursday. First and foremost, preventing the loss of civilian life. Second, preventing further escalation and reducing the risk of a regional spillover. Third, minimizing collateral impacts on non-belligerent states and civilian populations. And fourth, mitigating global economic shocks, energy, fertilizer, and commercial supply chains, she said. Anand added that Iran's actions in the Strait of Hormuz risk not just very severe economic impacts, but humanitarian crises in poor countries which can't receive fertilizer or other agricultural goods. We have seen those effects already at the fuel pumps, she said, but closing the Strait of Hormuz is contrary to international law and to the freedom of navigation. The consequences for countries around the world, including in the region itself, stand to be significant. This report by the Canadian Press was first published on March 19, 2026, with files from Kyle Dugan. And now our next story from the world of federal politics. Pierre Poilievre frames himself as a prime minister in waiting on a whirlwind U.S. tour. And this comes from Raisa Patel, the Ottawa Bureau. From Ottawa, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre capped his U.S. tour Thursday by continuing to frame himself as a prime minister in waiting, making the case for a restored Canada-U.S. relationship in a New York speech, and reaching millions more on a top-ranked American podcast. Despite delivering a keynote speech at the Harvard Club of New York City and recording the Joe Rogan Experience in Austin, Texas, it was clear that Poilievre was seeking to appeal to audiences within Canada's borders. He partly delivered his speech in French, refused to smear Prime Minister Mark Carney during both appearances, and spoke of the humility required to helm a nation. It was during his interview with Rogan, which was recorded at the podcasting giant's Texas studio one day earlier, where Poilievre revealed he'd never spoken to President Donald Trump about his vision for a tariff-free trading relationship between Canada and the U.S. No, I believe in the rule of one prime minister at a time. So I fought like hell to win. I didn't win. We came very close. So I've said, listen, I'll leave it to the prime minister to do the negotiating, Poilievre said in a lengthy interview with Rogan, whose podcast regularly tops global podcast rankings and boasts more than 20 million followers on YouTube alone. I've said I'll support Carney any way I can, the conservative leader said. Even in my visit down there, I'm sending him text messages to tell him what's going on, to try and support his work, because we both want what's best for Canada. The interview centered heavily on the pair's shared passions for fitness, mixed martial arts, and healthy living, and focused less on repairing the economic relationship between Canada and its southern neighbor. Among other topics, both men also discussed why Poilievre lost a federal election he had once appeared all but certain to win. I wouldn't say they went crazy, Poilievre said, when Rogan asked whether Trump's annexation threats riled up the electorate. We're very proudly Canadian, so we're never going to be the 51st state, and I just wish he'd knock that bleep off so that we can get back to talking about the things that we can do as two separate countries that are actually friends. When repeatedly pressed by Rogan on what Poilievre would do if he became prime minister, the conservative leader reiterated many of the proposals he's advertised domestically, pledging to unlock our resources, unlock the power of free enterprise, and scale back government bureaucracy to position Canada as the freest economy in the world. How the hell did you lose? Rogan asked, prompting Poilievre to reply that he would stick to his message and overwhelmingly win the next campaign. After repeating his common refrain that Carney is stealing his ideas, Poilievre took a step back. Well, I won't criticize him on foreign soil, the leader said. Later in the interview, he noted that successful leaders must embody humility instead of behaving like an egomaniac. Several hours after the interview aired, Poilievre took to a New York stage where he again touted the power of the free market. It works best, this free enterprise system, when it works between countries, between nations like Canada and the U.S., Poilievre said. Yet paradoxically, ironically, here we are today, clashing with tariffs, harsh words, boycotts, and other disputes. We need a road to repair the relationship and restore reciprocal free trade and security cooperation. In contrast to Carney, who frequently references a rupture in the global order and has looked to China for economic opportunity, Poilievre focused on Canada and the United States' decades of shared history and warned against a reset with Beijing. President Trump's efforts to prepare and protect the United States from Beijing, which is a regime, by the way, that our own Prime Minister in Canada called the single biggest threat to Canada, is fully founded. Canada, however, should be seen as a friend and not a foe in that effort, Poilievre said. When asked following his speech about Carney's hopes for Chinese partnerships and the strain that could place on the Canada-U.S. relationship, Poilievre again said he would not disparage my prime minister on foreign turf. Our historic alliance with the United States is far more important and far more immediate, and we must do everything we can to preserve it, the conservative leader told Catherine Lubier, a former advisor to Prime Minister Stephen Harper and Quebec's former top representative in the U.S. Poilievre's office has been keen to promote the leader's tour, which also saw Poilievre make stops in Detroit and Houston. His sit-down with Rogan garnered additional attention after the controversial podcaster claimed last spring that the conservative leader would not appear on his show because his advisors deemed it too problematic. Let's move on to an article from the world of television. And the headline, ABC cancels The Bachelorette season with Taylor Frankie Paul, citing a 2023 video. This comes from Andrew Dalton and Alicia Rancilio, the Associated Press. With the Dateline Los Angeles, ABC has scrubbed the upcoming season of The Bachelorette, starring Taylor Frankie Paul, 3 days before its planned premiere, citing a newly released video from 2023 in which she appears to punch, kick, and throw chairs at her former partner as her young daughter watched and cried. Thursday's cancellation of the already filmed 22nd season of the reality show is unprecedented. While ABC parent company Disney cited the older video, the move comes amid a current domestic violence investigation involving Paul and Dakota Mortensen, father to a son who is the youngest of her 3 children. In light of the newly released video just surfaced today, we have made the decision to not move forward with the new season of The Bachelorette at this time, and our focus is on supporting the family, a statement from Disney Entertainment Television said. A Paul representative responded that she had been abused for years while remaining silent about it. Before her Bachelorette casting, Paul had already become a reality star through The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, whose production is paused. In 2023, video published by TMZ Thursday, Mortensen is apparently trying to stave off Paul with one hand while he shoots phone video. She's shown punching him, kicking him, and then throwing 3 chairs at him while repeatedly screaming, "You did this!" "The only thing you know how to do is hurt me," Mortensen said, while repeatedly pleading with Paul and reminding her that her daughter was watching. A child can be heard sobbing, screaming, and shouting, "Mommy." Paul's daughter would have been about 5 at the time. The video was consistent with Paul's arrest in 2023, when she was charged with aggravated assault and other offenses, including domestic violence in the presence of a child. She pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor assault charge, and the other counts were dismissed. A spokesman for Paul said in a statement Thursday that she is very grateful for ABC's support as she prioritizes her family's safety and security. After years of silently suffering extensive mental and physical abuse, as well as threats of retaliation, Taylor is finally gaining the strength to face her accuser and taking steps to ensure that she and her children are protected from any further harm. The statement said Taylor has remained silent out of fear of further abuse, retaliation, and public shaming, and that she is now exploring all of her options, seeking support, and preparing to own and share her story. Mortensen denied wrongdoing. As anyone who has seen the video will understand, this is a deeply upsetting situation. I am unfortunately used to these baseless claims about me and our relationship, which I categorically deny. I am focusing on our son and his safety and hope that Taylor will do the same, his statement said. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier radio reading service. Our next story is from the world of sports, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the headline is Auston Matthews undergoes surgery, will be ready for Maple Leafs training camp. And this comes from Kevin McGran, sports reporter for the Star. Maple Leafs captain Auston Matthews had successful surgery to repair a torn medial collateral ligament in his left knee, the team said in a release on X. His recovery time is approximately 12 weeks, the release said. Matthews is expected to be ready for training camp in September. Matthews had the surgery in New York City. He was around the team on Tuesday when the team lost to the Islanders. He left last week's game against the Anaheim Ducks after taking a knee-on-knee hit from Ducks captain Radko Gudas, who was ejected from the game and suspended for 5 more by the league. Matthews' injury spurred debate on 2 fronts. The league's Department of Player Safety came under heavy scrutiny by what was deemed in many circles as too light a sentence on Gudas for such a dangerous hit. Meanwhile, the Leafs were embarrassed at their own response to it. None of Matthews' teammates confronted Gudas after the hit. The Leafs have been noticeably more physical in the games following Matthews' injury. And moving on to more news from the Leafs. Maple Leafs find fun and games on a day that, like the season, goes to the dogs. This comes also from Kevin McGran. With the losses piling up, the playoffs out of sight, and the pressure for change always in the air, the Maple Leafs decided to have a little fun with about 8,000 of their fans Thursday at Scotiabank Arena. It amounted to Joseph Woll winning a Simon Says contest while also stopping coach Craig Berube's shootout attempt, Troy Stecker's dog winning a race, and the Leafs sharing the spotlight with the PWHL's Scepters. "It was a great day for everybody," Berube said. "It brings back the fun. A lot of times when you're going through tough times, you forget the game's fun. You're playing the game because you love to play the game. Yes, you get paid and it's a job, but today it was none of that. It was about having fun and giving back to our fans." Fans watched the Scepters play 2 periods of split squad 3-on-3, along with some shootout and target drills. It was fun to let the defense slide a little and let people go in on some breakaways and show off their skills, Scepters captain Blair Turnbull said. It was super fun all around. The Leafs came out for about 15 minutes of practice. That's when Berube decided to join the shootout. "Not very good, eh?" he said. "I was a little worried. As I was going in, I felt not bad. Then I thought if I tried to make a move, I might fall, so I opted to shoot." Woll said there was no way he was going to let his coach score. "Stuff him," a smiling Woll said. "I just went down and it hit me. It was on him to decide whether to make a move or shoot. I wasn't in the mood to let him get one by me." Berube laughed at that. "I don't think my shot is going to beat anybody." Perhaps it should be no surprise that Woll won the Simon Says contest, more able to focus than the Leafs skaters as Steve Max, a professional Simon Says caller, pitted fans and players against each other. "I wondered if it would be as effective if you just closed your eyes. You don't get thrown off by him moving," Woll said. "I tried not to look at him. Just listen. Trust that." Steve Lorentz managed to get thrown out of the Simon Says competition twice, the only player invited to have a second chance. "I'm not good at that game," Lorentz said. "Clearly I have to work on my listening skills." Lorentz did some play-by-play when Joe Bowen, who is retiring after this season, handed him the mic during the Leafs 3-on-3 session. "Lucky enough, Max Domi scored, and I was able to get a holy Mackinac in," Lorentz said. The players' dogs were clearly the hits, each chasing their owner down the ice. William Nylander's Bernedoodle, named Banksy, and Golden Doodle, named Pablo. Nick Robertson's English Golden Doodle, named Sonny, and a very disobedient Zoe, Matthew Knee's Golden Doodle. Stetcher's Phoebe, a Bernese mountain dog, ran from one end of the ice to the other in 8 seconds. "She won a gift bag, so maybe we'll open it and give her a treat," Stecker said. "She's on a strict diet, so maybe we'll keep it to 1. It was a welcome sight to see smiles for a change as the players were able to throw their worries out the window for a day. "My favorite moment was that kid at the end getting a little emotional when he won tickets to the game," Woll said of the boy who won the fan side of Simon Says. "That brings things you back. It reminds me that hockey's bigger than us." And just a final quick note on naming rights, Leafs defenseman Oliver Ekman-Larsson said he and his wife named their new son Louis. He is a brother for Leo. Next, a story from the world of entertainment, specifically television, and the headline is, "Heated rivalry was a sanctuary for joy. Are toxic fans poisoning the well?" This comes from Seema Shakeri of the Toronto Star. Heated Rivalry is a Canadian success story for the ages. Based on Rachel Reed's hit Game Changers book series, it became Crave's most successful original series ever, catapulting its cast to a level of international fame that few in the industry anticipated when the queer hockey drama premiered last November. For months, that fame was defined by a celebratory, inclusive sanctuary of dance parties, trivia nights, and charity fundraisers. But now, that sanctuary is showing signs of discord. A vocal minority of the show's audience, primarily on X, has turned on the very actors they claim to adore. These fans are now perpetuating racist abuse, homophobic tropes, and shipping fantasies that have blurred the line between fictional romance and real-world harassment. On March 9th, the cast issued an unprecedented public condemnation of their own audience. Don't call yourself a fan if you share racist, homophobic, biphobic, misogynistic, ageist, ableist, parasocial, bigoted comments of any kind, the statement read. None of us need your hateful love. Actors Francois Arnault, who plays Scott Hunter, and Hudson Williams, who plays Shane Hollander, posted the message simultaneously to their Instagram stories, followed by other castmates. Co-lead Connor Story, who plays Ilya Rozanov, who has recently pared down his digital presence, did not repost. A conspiracy campaign. The United Front comes on the heels of months of digital infighting. At the center of the storm are shipping wars, conspiracy theories developed by fans who want lead actors Williams and Story to be in a real-life relationship. This has led to fans fighting proxy battles for their favorite stars, often accusing cast members of sabotaging one another, despite the cast and crew maintaining that the set was a friendly, comfortable place where everyone felt like family. The fallout has been particularly pointed for Arnault. The actor, who came out as bisexual in 2020 and is the only openly queer main cast member, has become a target of the very tropes the show seeks to dismantle. Posts have called him a predator and a cheater. He allegedly is letting his youth and beauty be taken away from him by a 40-year-old creep. "Oh, baby, we are getting you out of there," reads a post with over 7,500 likes about Story regarding rumors that the 26-year-old is dating Arnault, who is 40. The racial toll. Williams, who is biracial, has been the target of racist comments. Accounts have attacked his Asian heritage and insulted his loved ones. "Now here's the ugliest B Korea has ever produced," reads one post about Williams from a notorious hate account. While these represent more popular comments, others that gain less traction include slurs and death threats. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the March 20th issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Phil Tomczak. Thank you for listening.